What's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is a very special guest. I told y'all this year or these upcoming episodes that I was going to tell the difference between family and special guests. So a special family member today, because again, I know I can vouch for the work that they do. I've been in spaces where I've seen them do the work and the commitment. Even I don't know if she remembers, she even brought me and played a contribution to me being in the mental health space, but we'll get into it. I don't introduce nobody because I don't like to mess a credential. I don't like to mess anything up. So you can let the people know who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reg, for having me on. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. My name is Kevana Nixon. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, also an approved supervisor candidate. One of the co-founders for Black Men Heal. I do private practice part-time. I'm in school also to get my doctorate. I'm bringing my table to the meeting room. Okay. I'm not trying to sit at your table. I'm bringing the table. So, yeah.
Yes. Think we are in for a treat today. One of the things I'm always glad for is that I'm surrounded by such intellectual people that are I can look to for guidance for a lot of my I want to say career. I guess it's a career now, but a lot of my time they always said like, yo, you're ahead of your years, or you're wise beyond your years. And so in order for that, I got to catch up to people who are doing the work and are in the vision. She just named like 6 things, and she left a few things off that she's doing. And I appreciate that because now I feel like I could gain wisdom. Most of the time I'm the loudest in the room, but when I'm around them, I'm like the quietest because I'm just soaking in the knowledge and the game and the information. So I'm excited to have you today and get this information.
I appreciate it.
So how did you get your start into therapy, family therapy? Like what inspired you to go this route? You could have been anything else in the world, but what made you go this way?
Well, I love that question because I tell people the story all the time. So I haven't been in the field that long. Like I finished and got my master's in 2012,
Mm,
right? And so before that, I was a real estate paralegal for like 8, 9 years, right? I wanted to be an attorney. For those who don't know, and this will add to my story, but both of my parents are recovering addicts. And again, I grew up, I'm a 70s baby, but grew up in the 80s. And so again, that crack epidemic, both of my parents, suffer with that. And again, I wanted to be attorney. We got to get this together. And in my work, I didn't love it. And my mom always told me, she was like, yo, do something you love to do. Right. And I got to a point in that career where it was like kind of topped out. And I was like, I don't love this.
mm,
And so I would do the closing. So when people go and close on the house, I did the closings. And I would always talk to people like, yo, how'd you meet? What's your story? I always want to hear people's story. And then for some reason it clicked for me. I was like, yo, what would I do for free? And I noticed I had already I wasn't doing therapy, but people always talk to me, always. Since I was a little girl, adults would tell me their secrets. People would come and talk to me, and I loved it. You know what I'm saying? I could be at the airport sitting by myself reading a book, and somebody would start coming and talk to me, and I'd be like, why are you talking to me? So 2009, I decided, I was like, yo, I'm gonna go back and do this. And the doors open. God opened the doors for me to do it. And so I have 2 masters. My first master's is in counseling psych. And it's a good foundation, but I really want to do marriage and family. And I was like, but I'm like, I'm not married, I don't have no kids, but I'm gonna tell somebody, I
mm,
was kind of a little self-conscious about that. And I moved back to the East Coast. I was in Nashville, moved to the East Coast where I'm originally from. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do this, Kavana. And I found something, and it's a place called Counsel for Relationships, and they had a postgraduate program where I could get my master's in marriage and family, and changed my life. Opened me up, and that's how I really got involved in the field. And I actually like wouldn't change it. Like I know I'm supposed to be doing this, like working with families, with couples, and all that good stuff. So yeah.
You said a lot there. I was wanted to take some notes, but I was in it. Well, I know one of the things that we gonna talk off here about because I'm in the buying my first home soon, so I need some resources. So
I got you, Reggie.
we'll be talking soon. But the other thing was, I think even now one of the top shows right now is Snowfall, and just
Yo, I
one
love.
just I want to hear real life experience from it because we talk about like it's different being in slavery and then experiencing slavery and people talking about it. So how was it growing up with parents that were battling with addiction?
Yeah, well, with my father, and I tell people this, and I was actually talking to somebody last night about this. I said, so in working in the field, you start to understand people's story, right? But as a little girl, I didn't know my father's story. So they divorced when I was really young, like 3 or 4. Like I barely remember my dad being around. And after that, what I know is his story is that it was really, really bad for a long time. So he wasn't around. If I saw him, it was maybe like once every couple years. um and my mom, hers was a little bit different. So after she divorced my father and then moved in with her parents and my grandparents, we lived with them. She kind of started kind of using a little bit heavier. Like she started out with weed and then cocaine and then freebasing. And hers like got worse, where she would like leave for work on a Friday and not come home back till a Monday. You know what I'm saying? And so we lived with our grandparents, so that was kind of me and my sister's safe base. But what we noticed is that something was off. You know what I'm saying? Like again, it was a sporadic thing where she'd be here or not be there.
Mm,
And so my she went to rehab one time and was clean for maybe like 30 days and then fell off again. And again, it was the same thing, her kind of like not being present for certain things or not showing up. And finally my grandmother went to her, was like, yo, if you don't get it together, I'm gonna give Keisha and Kevana to the state.
mm,
And I think that's what hit my mom. And she says it that, changed her life, where she was like, I knew I had to stop because I didn't want to lose my daughters. So, but for my mom, again, I think our saving grace or my saving grace were my grandparents. And my mom, she did really well. She's been clean for like 32 years now.
mm,
Yeah, and she still like attends NA meetings and leads NA meetings and talks about her story and her struggles and stuff like that. So again, hers was a little different. My dad, from what I understand now, is that he was really out there bad. Like he was stealing jewelry from his girlfriends. He actually, some one story I heard was that he had stole like all this dope from this big drug dealer in Philly and they were after him to kill him. So again, I knew his story more after the fact when I got to talk to him and understand. But what I felt or understood is that it was very disjointed. You know what I'm saying? And for me, it was like, well, what's happening to my mother? What's happening to my father? Why is this happening? Like why did that drug do that to them? What was the reason? And then doing the work now, I understand it's not just them doing the drug, there's other things connected to it, right?
mm,
My mom had trauma, my dad had trauma, right? And so those things were, it was a tool for them to escape, it was a tool for them to release whatever burden or hurt they were carrying.
mm. Yeah, no, that's heavy, and congrats to your mom for being able to stay sober that long. Because I know addiction, I'm learning more about it now. I've been piqued my curiosity. I've been playing therapist without actually going, and I'm going to get it now. Drexel, we'll talk about it, but
Okay, okay.
just understanding it, and addiction has a story. Every addiction has a story that's associated with it. Uh, so it's two questions that I want to ask, and I don't want to forget this one. Is like how has addiction? What are some things that about addiction that people don't know? We can get into that. You can kind of tie it into this question, but what role did the crack that epidemic play into fathers being out from the household and in like how you see it today? Because we're talking about family therapy. Is one of the biggest things is that Black fathers or fathers in general are not in the household. Like, can we talk? Is there a connection between the two in those epidemics and everything?
Absolutely. I mean, what people don't realize, and people have to do their own research, and I always urge people to do their own research, is that the system, the patriotic white supremacist system, has always been set up to separate the black family, with the head with being the black man, right? So people don't even realize that, again, when welfare was offered as a tool, it was supposed to be offered as a tool support to black families. What they didn't know is that in order for a black family to have it, the father could not be present. Literally, he could not live with them. So there were times where, again, the father would sneak and be with the family, but ultimately, in order for them to get the benefits, they couldn't. So that's one tool of separation. The whole drug epidemic that they started was another tool. And again, if you think about the places where they put it, right? And people are watching Snowfall and they follow the character Franklin. Again, Franklin, is in California. In what is it? He's in Compton. Where is he at? Yeah,
He
he's in
and
Compton.
Crenshaw, is it? He's in that area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But even before that, if you follow the story, his father kind of was out there bad, So yeah, they knew where they were. I mean, again, even though people look at to me, the small men who are involved in it, like Franklin, who are pushing the drugs, but again, There, you cannot make cocaine in the United States. You have to go outside of the country to get it, right? And they were smuggling it in, and they knew where to put it. And so to me, yeah, absolutely, is as another tool to separate the black family by using it. And this, even though again it was black men, it was the whole family. If you saw it, like I said, it impacted my mother and my father. Nobody was exclusive. So now not only are you cutting the head, the man, but you're also cutting the mother, right? And so how many motherless, fatherless children do we have out here? You know? So yeah.
Um, and so looking back now as a professional with credentials and studying and looking at all of these things, what would you tell that little girl that was going through all of those things and how to manage it? Like what advice do you give in that capacity?
Wow, that's a great question. What I would tell that little girl is that whoever you're with and whoever you have, you are supported and you're loved, right? The reason that your mother and father are not there is not because of you. Because what happens is I'm talking to a lot of adult people who have that little girl, that little boy inside of them that still want their mother and father to show up and think that, oh, why can't you? Why didn't you? And know that it's not about you. Their struggle, their trauma, their hurt is something they're still fighting with. You know, I had to learn for myself as little Kevana was that it's not that my father didn't love me. He didn't know how to love me because of the hurt he had. I think he absolutely loved me. He didn't know how to because of what he was hurt with. He was 20 years old, right? And so, yeah, so them not being there, them not showing up is actually a blessing in disguise because there's parts where I was like, yo, what if my father was there and I had to be around that, right? What if we were on the road with him and again when he got killers after him with his two children and his wife,
Mm.
right? And so just know that whatever you have around you is to support you and love you. And the people who you want, they can't, not because they don't want to, but because of their own stuff. So
Do you and your sister ever talk about those conversations? Like, how did it affect your relationship? Did it affect, like, did it have any bond on her or any impact on her? I should say.
yeah, you know what is it's interesting, and I hope everybody understands this is that even though if you grow up in the same household with again your siblings, everybody has their own experience because of who they are, their personality, and their individuality, right? So me and my sister would talk about it because I remember times there was Bobby Brown was out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my mom who was taking my sister to a Bobby Brown concert for her birthday, and my mom didn't show up, and my mom, I don't know what happened, but again she probably was using and got, but didn't show up. And I remember as a little girl like calling her friends like, hey, have you seen my mom, this and that. And me and my sister later talked about that story, and so my sister had a different experience of my mom and her drug use. Like she didn't remember as much as I did, and I was older, but I was more, if people look at child order, birth order, there's a difference in how we process and we look at things. If you're the oldest child, if you're the
Mm-hmm.
middle child, if you're the youngest. And so my sister was more free, but it did impact her where she was nervous about people really showing up for her when they were supposed to. And I never knew that because we didn't talk about it, right? So there's things I remembered and there's things she remembered, but we processed it differently based on our personality and like our birth order and just who we are.
Mm. When you
Yeah.
say supposed to, is that like events or emotionally as well? Like something happened that impacted her and they were supposed to show up. Like what you mean when you say that?
When you in regards to like what how
Like
you remember
people
stuff.
showing up, like that was her worry. Was that mean emotional wise or just like, all right, I have a recital that I need people to show up to?
Yeah. That like actually both, but
Mm-hmm.
more like physical showing up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing for me. Mine was emotional and physical.
Okay.
Definitely emotional. Like, are you really gonna do it? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I think the last question, and you just spoke on it, but just like in a little deeper detail, if you have anything to add to it, like the stories that's connected to addiction, like they say when people go to jail, like the family serves the time with them. And so the same thing with addiction, the people that are going through it have their story, and then I guess the people that are affected by it has their story. Is there any other details you can add on that?
Yeah, no, and I love you brought that up, that question, Reg, because it's not just the person. Again, it's everybody's the system. It's the family system. Everybody's impacted. So I think about my grandmother and my grandfather. So other people don't know this too, is that my grandfather also was like an alcoholic and a recovering alcoholic. But mind you, this man was born in 1917. This man also served in the Air Force. This man was Tuskegee Airman, where again, you couldn't drink the same from the same water fountain, but you were now supposed to go over to another country and fight for me, right?
Mm,
And then saw his friends and people die. And so what I knew growing up is that by the time I came around, he wasn't drinking anymore, and it wasn't bad like it was when my mom was growing up. But when I got into the field and started understanding, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. This man had PTSD probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand why he drank,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and I don't know anything else he went through, right? And then I think about my grandmother having to, again, be in this kind of codependent relationship where she had to take care of my father. And then now her daughter's out here, right? And so I wonder the stress she had. Then she's got to take care of her grandchildren that she probably didn't sign up for, right? She
Mm-hmm.
has to live through it, right? When you come to your daughter and you're like, yo, you've got to get it together, And then not that, I think about my mom's siblings, about my uncle and my aunt. And again, I think my grandmother would reach out and connect to them and talk to them about what's going on for her. So now that creates anger and probably resentment with her brother or her siblings, that I think
Mm-hmm.
they work through it, but I don't know if there's been a full kind of what they call not a repentance, but a time where they go and say, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry for what I did. So yeah, everybody's impacted, and it's important to talk to everybody. So there's a Al-Anon thing, and there's one for teens too, and they never had us go, but just know that kids are just everybody's impacted, right? And so you don't just deal with the person, you got to deal with the whole family dynamic and system, because everybody's impacted by it, and people don't know that, because a lot of times what they don't know, Reg, is interesting, is a lot of people don't operate from that mind frame. They just look at the individual, but as individuals, we're always connected to something. I don't float out here by myself, even if I don't have a family of my own. I do have a mother, I have a sister, you know what I'm saying? I have nieces, I have brothers. So all of that is part of who I am and makes me up and what I do in the world. So I hope I answered your question. I feel like I got off.
No, you
off
did, and it actually tied into another one. It's a big question. It's always loaded, and I'm sure it's many answers and different approaches to solving it. But how do we heal like generational trauma where without the generation participating in it?
Ooh, come on, Reg, with the question. Yeah, oh, I love that question, because man, if I could be Ayanla of Philly,
Mm,
I could be up here with all the families, like, yo, bring your family in.
mm,
It's to start having the conversations, like, people don't understand how powerful they are and how important they are, and I know my mom, the baby boomers, and even my grandparents didn't come from a generation where they talked about it because they were taught not to. There was not space, and while we created Black Men Heal, there wasn't space for Black people, period, to talk about what they were going through, because they had to be mindful about their spaces, right? Am I going
mm,
to be killed? Am I going to be hung? You know what I'm saying? Am I going to be hurt? Am I going to be raped? Like, what is going to happen to me, right? But now we have the space to have the conversations. I feel like our generation has a better understanding, and we've created the space where we can talk about it. So go ask those hard questions. Like, I wish, well, knowing what I know now, I really wish I would have asked more questions of my grandparents. Like, yo, what was that like for you? You know what I'm saying? What did it mean for you to sacrifice your life for a country that did not love you as a Black man, right?
mm.
That didn't support you. My grandma, I'm like, what was it like for you to see your daughter struggle with this addiction? You not know what to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, so have these conversations, understand that your grandparents' story, your parents' story, it's not just what you see, there's other things connected to it. So
Mm.
yeah, start having the conversations. Y'all need me to come talk? I'll let me. I'll come. Like, yeah, I love it. One thing I miss is I used to do community-based family therapy in Philly, West
Mm.
Philly, South Philly, Northeast, North Philly. Loved it. That you see so much when you go in somebody's house and see how they operate. So yeah.
I think one of the things you said is key, and it's so natural for you because you're in it. But it's the way you have the conversations as well, and because I'm like, yo, I tried it before, but as I grew and learned more and had more conversations with individuals yourself, it's an approach to it. Though even the way you phrased the question was, how was it dealing with that instead of how weren't you so more supportive when your daughter was going through this, or why didn't you do this? It more of an attack in that way, where you got to come with a level of understanding to have those conversations. And so that's where the question come from, like, how do you have those healing? Because a lot of people will be like, I can't have that conversation with my mom or my dad because they're not open to it, but they would be if you phrase the question the right way.
Yes, yo, I love that you said that, Reg, because you're right. As a professional, and that's my privilege, is I know how to ask it. I know how to approach it, right? But you're right. And I talk to my clients all the time, like, hey, what I need you to do is go have this conversation. They'd be like, yo, Kevana, I can't. I said, well, I'm gonna tell you why you can't. Because you go in, you're still hurting. So you're speaking from the wounded place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, why didn't you do this? And I tell them, go in curious. Like,
Mm.
so yeah, what happened? What happened to you? Not why did you do it? What happened? Yeah. But you're right. It is a level of how you approach it, but it is hard when you're wounded and you're still hurt from that place about how to go in and be curious because you're just like, nah, you should have did it. Like, why didn't you do it? Why are you like this? Why do you keep doing this?
Mm. No, and actually, I want to dive a little deeper in that because I had my mom on this podcast. I had my dad, my sister. I made it a whole family affair, but I had the privilege again of being around individuals like you to ask questions the right way. But what's the first step for a person who doesn't know how to ask that question the right way? Like like how do they package up that pain? Because that's exactly what I had to do with my father about packaging up my pain and him being absent and then trying to understand him as a visual individual. But that process is not as easy for everyone because it's like either you fighting for the adult or you fighting for the child. And I had to get into that adult mode.
Yo, Reg, you just said a whole word. Come on. Y'all come to Reg's church Sunday. Like, come on. It's his word. But you're right. So what I tell people, because you're right, if you don't have the privilege, and I like I said, it's an honor that I have the privilege of knowing it because of my training, is get support. Like, don't go in there by yourself. Get somebody who's maybe a close family member that is more objective, that it doesn't have, again, not much stake in the game, but they're not as reactive. Because like you said, it's hard to package that and put that stuff away. It's not, I tell people all the time, it's not easy. Like you've probably been sitting with for 15, 20 years. So it's not going to be like, oh, let me put this over here aside and be curious. No.
Mm,
So yeah, find somebody who can be there with you through it to be objective. And I always recommend like another family member, not somebody on the outside, because they not your family ain't gonna be open. They're gonna be like, why you want to know this?
mm,
But yeah, fine. And then I always tell people write down your questions beforehand. You know what I'm saying? Because if you have an idea about like what you want to ask, you won't be as reactive in the moment because again you're still acting out of the emotionality of what has happened to you. So I hope
that's
that's
a
helpful.
gem. That's a gem and a jewel. All right, I got one more question, and then I want to get into some hot button topics next too. But marriage and family, we talked more on the family side, but I wanted to go more into the marriage side. Why are from studies, statistics, personal interactions with couples, why are so many marriages not as successful? Or are those numbers falsified? Is there more successful than is being portrayed as far as like media wise or numbering wise? What has been your experience on a day-to-day basis in that capacity?
Yeah, I think there is a misnomer about marriages, especially black marriages not being successful. If anybody's out there, please follow Black Love. Again, because we don't see it. If we don't see it, we don't believe it, right? And so Black Love Network and their app has created this space where you can see it, where black couples are together. We just don't see it. So we think, oh, it's not happening. I will say, because I was on another podcast and somebody's asking me, like, oh, research says, or Kevin Samuel says something about research says, women
That's
are
one of my next hot button topics, but we're
let's
going
let's get into it. Um, the statistics are showing, and this is another thing. That's why I said people do your research, is that people can throw out statistics, but ask them, so where's your research coming from? Who wrote the article? What population did they study? You know what I'm saying? Was the research funded? Like, even though those are not the questions people will ask, but that's why I'm paying Drexel good money to teach me this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I do my research now. I look, if somebody read a book, yo, I'm looking them up. Where you
Mm,
from? What you're training? Who are you? Because I'm not just gonna be listening to anything. Any
mm,
boo, as we know, Boo Boo the Fool can be out here telling you statistics.
mm,
So what I tell people now is that marriage meant different things depending on the era and the time, right? And so when people are like, oh, women are, they're the ones filing for divorce more now, 80% of them are not staying. I said, guess what? Women have more rights now.
mm,
If you think about before women's rights came around in the 70s, women couldn't open a bank account, women couldn't buy a house. Anything that was connected to capital or what they needed was connected to a man. So guess what I had to do? I had to marry a man. I could not just do something on my own. And so probably more than likely, not all, but the reason they stayed in marriages is because they had to and didn't have any rights, right? There wasn't this space where women could just, yeah, they could go to college, but then what would their career? Their career may have been limited or boxed into just doing this and being a homemaker, being a mother. I said, so now I think there's a lot more autonomy in regards to women saying, hey, and men too, but saying, hey, you know what? I don't have to be married to do this. I'm okay doing this. And so it doesn't have to be tied to that. The other side of that, because I want to play devil's advocate, is that, that, I think there's a level of commitment also that some marriages throughout the time have learned to work through. Because I tell people all the time, I was like, yo, if you're committed to the process and the work that I do with your couple, you good. It's not going to be peaches and rainbows and, but if you're committed to the work because it's work, then you'll work through it. But a lot of times I think, especially in this microwave age, we're like, yeah, it's not working, I'm out, right? We'll be committed to like our followers on Instagram, but we may not be committed to the person who, again, we want to build with, dream with, and work with. So yeah, those are my thoughts about, we're not always seen as black couples, black marriages. Again, marriage means different things depending on the era, the time, and society and what's going on, and the other half is, like I said, we're in a microwave culture. And so a lot of times we're like, we don't have to be in it, and it's easier for them to get out than actually work on it. So
Yeah, and I want to continue on that, but I wanted to backtrack just a little bit because you said something earlier that I kind of struggle with when I did my podcast or starting out the podcast. I'm like, I'm not a therapist. What gives me the authority to speak on, like, anything in regards to mental health or whatever the case may be? So that took me some time to work through, and I found my way through it and niche and how to do it. You spoke earlier about, like, hey, I don't have my family, I'm not married. How did you get over that hump within yourself to become a licensed marriage and family therapist?
I love that question. But God,
Mm,
like, I literally, in my belief, in my just my faith is that, if God brings it to you or puts it in front of you, you're supposed to be doing it. Do you know how many, no couples ever asked me if I'm married or have kids
mm,
ever? I actually had one lady, she laughed, my friend's grandmom, she lives like on, she like lived like on 54th in Baltimore. We went over her house and she was like, oh, you're married to family therapist? She was like, oh, are you married? I was like, no. And she started laughing at me like, yo, in my face. And I was like, people don't care about me being married. And I'm not teaching you necessarily how to be in marriage. I'm teaching you how to be in relation with a person, right?
mm.
How do you be in relationship with this person? Yes, and it's part of the marriage, but how do you be in relation with them, right? Based off all your stuff and how you're communicating, right? How you're learning how to argue. So,
Don't
yeah.
skip over that. I think we hit a little space right there. What do you mean when you say how not teaching marriage, teaching about how to be in relation? What does that look like? What is that? How do people look for that?
Um, you have to look at it like, what happens in your relationship. I always ask people, like, when we first get started, like, yo, what attracted you to this person? Why did you want to be in this relationship? Why do you want to stay in this relationship? Does this person meet your needs? So it's like, how do you show up in the relationship, and are you getting what you need? And not getting what you need is not, I'm not getting what I want. What you need goes back to who you really are. Do you know your needs, right? Do you know, like, if I have abandonment issues and I know that if I feel like somebody's going to abandon me, I shut down and I close off, right? I send a message to my partner like, oh, they may not know what's going on with me, right? But I send a message to them like, I don't want them around. That's what they may take, right? So if I'm in a relation with you, I can't be in a relationship with you like that. I can't keep sending you that message because of my stuff, right? So I have to see, how do I argue, right? How do I communicate, right? How do I support them, right? So all those things about how do you, that's how you look at how you be in relationship, how are you in relation with the person you're with. Does that make
Does
sense?
No, I'm with you. And that goes back to the other side. If that's the marriage side, I'm guessing that works in family as well. Like the how you're in relation with your mother, your father, your son, your sister, brother, and so on and so forth. I'm guessing it's the same tactics as well.
Absolutely, and a lot of times I'm helping people with, like, when I used to do family work, and I kind of cringe when I see people doing family work and they blame the parent. Like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. I never came in there like that. Like, Reg, as a parent, like, number one, you ain't get no book with how to be a parent. Number one, right? You're only doing what you know to do, or you're tweaking it and taking away, keeping some stuff that worked for you and taking away the stuff that didn't work for you. What I go in there is to understand the parent. Like, as a parent, what are your struggles? What are you going on? What's happening for you? Because whatever happens for you is going to impact the child. So if I'm working with a mom who has 10 kids, has her own mental health issues and has depression, all I'm saying is, yo, sis, I get it. Yo, 10 kids, man, bless you, number one. I don't know how you do it, but you're amazing. But I get it. I want to see what happens when you're depressed for days about, how does it impact your parenting? Meaning, what happens? Meaning, it's hard for you to show up. It's harder for you to give the medication to the child. Okay, great, sis. So let me support you in that. Let's find ways, because I know you want to be there for your child. So if you're good, the child's good. How do we do that? So a lot of times, yeah, I'm looking about how they operate in the relationship and why, right? Is the mom, I had a mom and I love this mom. She lived like in South Philly and we was doing family therapy and her son was on probation for, he got into an argument with his sisters or something. And she would scream at him like going out the house, and he lived in South Philly. He lived like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was some stuff. If you go out at a certain time, yo, like she was worried, but she would scream at him and he'd be like, yo, I'm out, you know, and she screamed some more. And I was like, so one time we had a family session, I was like, oh, I get it. I was like, yo, you were so worried about him that you were screaming at him about how much you're scared, but you don't say you scared. You just screaming at him
Mm,
like to stay in this house. And I said, guess what, mom? He's not getting your message. When you're
mm,
screaming at him and yelling at him, guess what he hears? He hears you don't love me, you don't care. What I hear you saying is, I'm scared for your life and I don't want you to die like your brother did.
mm,
Right? It changes the whole dynamic in the family. He now seeing his mom from a different way and is never, he was like, you know, sitting there. He didn't say nothing, but I could see his face. He's like, wow, I didn't even know that. Cause mom, yeah, mom started crying and breaking down like, yeah, like people, kids, men die all the time. Boys die all the time. I don't want him to go out these doors and I don't know what happens to him and he doesn't come back through these doors. So yeah, I don't know how to get him to stay. So guess what? I yell, I scream.
mm.
So
No, that's powerful. It took me into a different space. I was even thinking I had a question on top of that, and I can't, it slipped me because you do real. Oh no, it wasn't a question, it was a comment. I just recently, and I mean within maybe the last month, just recently stopped blaming my parents. I think at some point you transition of becoming an adulthood, you start to realize what you were missing and that you didn't have growing up. And so you start to find place and blame of why didn't it come to you. And I think as you grow in through your adulthood and you come to a point to realize um your parents are just regular people. We give them superhero qualities and we got to remove it. And then once we remove those human qualities and give them as regular people, you're actually happy that they were able to do certain things for you with the structure and everything that was around them. And I think that takes time and it takes transition, it takes knowledge. And again, me having the privilege, because it is a privilege of talking to people like yourself with those that knowledge and experience, and knowing like, oh wow, you were coming from X, Y, and Z, and you were still able to, make this happen. Kudos to you. Like, all right, let me go get what I need now, and try to fulfill those. You did a good job just getting me here to this point, and so I
yeah,
just got to that spot.
come on. I'm telling y'all, y'all come to Reg's church. Y'all just got the whole word, okay? But I love what you said, Reg, because you're right. Even for me, you know how long it took me. I was already out my master's before I could. I'm gonna give a perfect example of, like you said, there's always layers to it. I probably was in my mid 30s before I forgave my mom.
Mm,
And I'm gonna tell you why. So I would work with in Philly, I would work like a lot with a lot of women, single black moms, helping their children, right? And I would coddle the moms, right? I would support them because I almost saw them as my mom, right? And so I didn't want to challenge them because I thought not that they would break, but I would hold them and support them in the space instead of challenging them on some of the things that they were doing. Meaning again, not blame, just having them think differently about how they show up. And my mentor, who I love, 100% Black social worker, been in the field for 30 years, is a genius, Angelo Adson. And I would used to have to come by past his office in the morning when I clock in, and he saw me. He was like, Kevana, yo, Kevana. I'm like, oh no, I ain't come here to do that today. He's like, yeah, come in here. And I'm like, dang. And he's like, so how's everything going? I was like, good. Okay. He was like, oh, okay, your voice getting high. What's going on? How you doing? I'm like, I'm good. Like, he was like, all right. He was like, you got to forgive your mom, right? And I was like, what?
what?
What are you talking about? He was like, you got to forgive your mom, right? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, so I know how you work with moms. He was like, until you forgive your mom, you will not be able to challenge and support these mothers in the way that they need.
Mm,
And he was like, look, your mom did one of the hardest things that people could do. She got off crack cocaine for you and your sister. He was like, so I know you think, oh, that's what she should have did, or he was like, but that wasn't easy, Kavana. He was like, yo, she did that. And she's been clean for so much time. And it hit me different. And he was like, you think she can't do something or she can't support you in a certain way. He was like, but you got to tell her what you need and forgive her. Man, I was in there boohooing like a baby. I was like, I still gotta see clients today. And it was one of the most life-changing moments for me because you're right. I had to see my mom as a human being, just a person, not just my mom who I thought you should do this and you should do that. And and I remember talking to her and it totally changed our relationship, in regards to me being able to say what I need and say how I feel and expressing her like, hey, mom, I still am hurting by this as a 30, 40-year-old woman, so yeah.
Is there a way to expedite that process? Like, say you in the middle of that now, because I feel, I don't want to say I feel bad, but I feel like you kind of wish you could come to that conclusion a little earlier to cut them some slack. Because what if you, for God forbid, something happens to them and they leave, you leave them off in that space of like unforgiveness, and it's like, I think, again, all adults that's growing from children into adulthood has to find that, space whenever they find it. But is there a way to expedite that process?
I wish, if I had it, I'd be selling it. I'd be like, yo, get this pill. We're going to expedite it. But I would say maybe not even so much a way to expedite it, but maybe to be like self-reflective because you have to, I always, especially in therapy, I tell people, I meet people where they at, not where I want them to be. And Wesley Harris said that, one of our new supervisors for Black Men Heal, who's dope. But he said that a lot of times we'll see more in the client than they see in themselves. And we'll be like, yo, you can get here, but it's their journey, not ours. Right. And so same thing for yourself, is you had to meet yourself where you were at. I was able to receive what my mentor said because of where I was at, and I was doing some of the work, right? Not all of it, but some of it. So, but if you do want to expedite it, you're going to have to do a hard look within yourself, because what people don't realize is that the experiences which you had with your parent or caregiver, whoever took care of you, impacts your current relationship with your partner, with your friends, with your cousins. Because if you have a wound, again, of rejection, where you felt rejected because of whatever your parent did, guess you did something to protect yourself from being rejected, right? So you might be very closed off, right? Or you might be really, really close and kind of like clingy. And so that is going to impact your relationship. I had a client yesterday, what I told her that, and we kind of went through her triggers and what comes up. And at the end of it, she was like, oh yeah, that's still my dad's stuff. And I was like, yeah. I said, guess what? The person who you impacted has no idea about your dad's stuff. Right. And so I would tell people, if you want to expedite it, look about how you operate in your relationships and why you do what you do. If you want to start to expedite it, start looking at that, and then start taking the next steps. Get support. You don't have to do it by yourself either.
Mm. And that's one key thing that I keep hearing you say is make sure you have some support when you're doing these challenging different things. Like, make sure you have support, because it's not an easy conversation, whichever type of conversation you're having, whether it be self or with someone else.
Yeah, I always had support along the way. Like I said, I've had mentors and people who poured into me all along the way. I didn't get here in what you see in front of me, again, whether it wasn't just through school, but again, supervisors who challenged me, you know what I'm saying? Just other peers who were like, hey, come on, you need to look at that. Even people I've dated or people I've been around, like, yo, come on, you need to look at that. So we're not in this alone, but look for support. Yeah, you don't have to do it by yourself.
you, I don't want to skip over because you said something I just triggered. I wasn't even thinking about that. Is it hard dating because of the knowledge that you have? Because now you're worried about their family history, their past relationships, all of the things in general. You can't just meet, and you just preached it, meet the person where they're at. You can't. It's almost impossible for you to meet the person where they're at, because you're thinking of so many different spaces or things that could have impacted them to where they got to you.
Yo, Reg, that's a whole nother podcast. And you just need to have like 3 or 4 people who are therapists who, you know what I'm saying, who go through that. But yeah, it for me, because people, the first time if I meet somebody, the first thing they ask me is, can you turn it off? And I'd be like, nah, I can't turn it off.
Mm.
And when I say that, because I don't look at, because some people, and you can speak to this, Reg, is that I don't just look at what I do as a job. It's not like
It's
a
a
9 to 5 to
lifestyle.
me. Like,
Hmm.
I'm purpose to do this. Like, God was like, oh, I'm going to make Kevana, and Kevana's going to do this one day. That's literally, I'm purpose to do this. So I love what I do. I literally will watch a like therapy show at home by myself, or I'm
Hmm.
watching a movie and I start thinking about all the pieces. I said, so when I say I don't turn it off, I don't turn it off with who I am. Like, I bring myself to it. So that's one thing. What I tell people is that me doing therapy is not just listening to you, I'm actually actively doing something with you. So I was like, I don't do therapy with you. I am going to look at all your stuff though. I'm just going to try and I'm going to try to give you grace, because I'm going to want somebody to give me grace, right? I just have to know. I just have to be mindful not to ask the therapy questions, right? Because then I've had dates where it turns into a therapy session. I'm like, yo, you owe me 150 for this. This was not a date. This was me. And then I enjoy it, but I'm like, yeah, I can't be your therapist. I mean, we can't date because I'm gonna be your therapist. I'm
Mm,
not gonna be your girlfriend. I'm
mm.
not gonna be your woman. But it is hard. But I think the wonderful part for me is that I feel like I have more understanding about stuff. You know what I'm saying? So if people say something, I'll be like, I get it. You know, I don't
Mm.
see people. I always used to tell my therapist that supervises that don't treat the clients that you work with, the people you work with, how they act. Treat them based off of their experience and their life experience. What they're giving you is not about you. What they've experienced has really either hurt them, has made them scared. So relate to them on that level. So yeah, I think I understand better. But yeah, I still got my stuff, still got flaws.
It's
Therapist
a,
is therapist.
it's a gift and a curse, like you said, because like you, for fun, I watch interviews. I love this, like this interaction, this conversation. I had talking points that I told you about, never even got to them because I am genuinely intrigued within the conversation, and I probably watch
I
like
get it.
3 or 4 interviews a day, and that's why it's like those questions, and people are like, oh, it's so easy. It's not easy. Like it's literally what I love to do, and like I can't turn it off. Like I will have the me and Kevana will probably the only difference that this conversation is that it's being recorded. We would have this conversation outside of this, just in general. And I think that's exactly what she's saying with therapy. This just is who she is, and it's naturally what you do.
Right. It's not like, oh, clock in, clock out. No,
Mm,
I could talk about it all day. I really could. I do have to give myself a break, just again because you taking on a lot emotionally, but
mm.
yeah, it's not work for me.
Yeah, that's true. And because the gift of me talking about mental health is that it's conversations happening, but sometimes every conversation is like, all right, we gotta talk to you. I'm just here to watch the game. Like I'm just here to, just shoot
Yeah,
the shit a little bit. Like I'm not here. We don't have to have a full on conversation about depression right now.
exactly. Hey.
So I definitely empathize with you.
Yep, yep.
Um, and now I don't know if you want to disclose this, so you could tell me to skip right over it. But we were having a meeting recently, and it was like a lot of therapists don't want to get into family and couples therapy for a reason. I don't know the reason because I'm not in it, but
Yeah.
from your experience, why is it a field that many are afraid to get into?
Man, have you've been around a family? You've been around your family? You've been around your family? You've been around a couple? Yo, try to imagine managing that.
Mm,
Like, you know what I'm saying? I enjoy it for something because something's wrong with me, but I love the more the merrier. Like the
mm,
more people, I had this one family I work with, and this was when I was doing community therapy, which I loved. And it was another black family, but they had like 12 kids.
mm,
12 kids. And literally, I would come on like on a Sunday and they literally would have all the chairs lined up, all lined up, and they'd be ready. They'd be like, all right, Miss Kavana, let's go. Right. And the mom was there and the dad was there, but the dad would be hiding upstairs in the bedroom. And I'd be like, wait,
mm,
wait, we're missing somebody. Where's dad at? And the kids be like, I'm like, mom, can you go get him? Because he's got to be part of this. But think about and there was this thing, and I won't give too much information so it doesn't reveal the family, but the kids had a rift with the dad because dad had like cheated on mom and been in and out. But when dad was away, mom would do this with the kids. All the kids, oh, I love my babies. When dad was here, she ain't paying no attention, right?
mm,
So dad was in the house and kids was like, hmm. So dad comes down and now I'm giving space for the kids to talk about what's really going on for them with dad being in the house. Imagine 10, 12 kids talking about and trying to manage that and then manage mom's emotions. I
mm.
couldn't even sit down. I was like going to each kid like this. So a lot of times people really don't want to work with multiple people or couples because it's a lot to deal with and manage. And if you don't have the training or the skill about how to balance it, it is very hard. For me, whatever I have, the gift that God has given me, I enjoy it. I really enjoy, like, especially with couple. I love couples.
I just had that happen. I gotta go into therapy, Kavana. I swear I do. I
You
literally just
do.
had
You
this
always
happen.
ready. Come on.
My dad, like he came up for a visit, and him and my older sister haven't talked. He came up with my younger sister, and she been wanting all of us to talk. I talk to my dad often. I don't hold anything against him. You weren't there. You had your own situation, whatever. My sister, that was his oldest. That was his baby. Like you said, different relationship. And so they know the dynamics. Me, I didn't really grow up with him. So it didn't really hurt me as much. If you're not there, that's what I'm used to. You know what I mean? Like, so there's
Yeah.
nothing to, it's different. And so we had to sit down. And I was like the mediator. I had to go get him because it was all of them firing at him, and he had to drive back with my little sister back down. So I'm like, I gotta fix that before that. And then no, I had to let him know that nobody was coming to apologize, like, and it was so complicated to the point of the question that I asked. I see why no one wants to go in it, because there's so many dynamics, and I'm like, whoo. And that, what a conversation that I thought was only going to take maybe about an hour or two turned into a 6 7, and mind you, we got there like 9 o'clock. It was after after King's Corner. So after
Oh,
King's Corner, I went over there and was like, all right, we're gonna have this conversation before they go back down south and go back. I wound up leaving like 3 o'clock in the morning, having that conversation. I'm like, this is not what I expected to be. So I understand, I empathize, and I don't think I may not want to go that route.
come on, therapist. That is a skill. Like people don't realize. Yeah, sometimes you just be. I remember I'm working with a couple right now, and there's been infidelity in a relationship, and they've been married for like 20 years, and they were one day they were going off like back and forth, like I couldn't get any words, and I was like, "Yo, relax." And so they started back and forth. Right then, their daughter called, and they both softened. Like they were going back and forth with each other, talking over each other, yelling. Their daughter called. They both softened. It was like, "Hey, you okay? Yep, we'll be there." And like so and so to pick you up. You okay? You need anything? And I was like, "Oh." So I challenged him. I was like, I said, "So before we end the session, I'm gonna let y'all know. I let y'all go on like this because I really wanted to pay attention about what happens in your dynamic." And I said, what I saw is that, and I said, we have to set some rules about how y'all fight fair, but you were talking over each other, you were yelling at each other. And I said, did you notice that helped any of the conversation? Did you feel heard? Did you feel understood? And they were like, nah. I said, but what I do know is that you can do it. I said, you know why? Because your daughter called, and you would have never known before you talked to your daughter that y'all were arguing like cats and dogs.
Mm.
So y'all can do it. You did it with your daughter because you love her. You put your stuff to the side. So if you're committed to the process and you want to do that for yourselves, you can do it. Yeah, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
God bless you, because I just that small experience without any training, without any, and I knew how I had to get everything settled. It was good at the end of the night. Like we
Okay.
all, like, my dad bought some flowers for my older sister. Like it was good. Like I was able to like get it. But and they all congratulated, like, yo, you did very good in there, because that was going the wrong way. But I'm like, now that if I know that's a small piece of what you, I don't want no part of that. That's
They're just like,
mm-mm.
nope,
And
nope.
that's people that I care about. That's really, I think I'm about to care about somebody else. Oh man, that's too many dynamics. I don't want to say a brighter note, but on a different note, there has been a lot of conversation with Kevin Samuels. There has been conversation with the rapper The Game. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what he's been saying about like men like paying majority of the bills, like you never have to pay. I
Yeah.
think um so I think because social media is very good, it's a gift and a curse. Is like just like every other thing. It's information, just like what you said earlier about like research and learning statistics and doing your own research. I think we put out these broad statements, and we think they're like like everyone's supposed to follow them, and you have the cult followings of each, like whatever appeals to you. What have you been seeing just from a family, relational dynamic, just seeing that from those aspects? Like what are your thoughts and opinions on some of these conversations that's happening?
Whew, Rich, that's an again another podcast. But no, I love that you brought that up because I love what you said that because social media, it is a gift and a curse. Like it creates this platform where we can connect with loved ones from afar. We feel like we have a voice in this world that never would hear us. The other part too is like you said, my word is not bond. Like what I say, it works for me, but it may not work for everybody else. But if especially if you're a celebrity and you have the platform and everybody's listening, oh, the game said this or whoever. And so I tell people, don't be misguided by what people say. Really pay attention to their actions, right? Actions speak louder than words, right? And so what do we know about Game and his relationship? Is he married? What are his relationship look like? You know what I'm saying? Look to the people who you want to look, who you want to model after. You know what I'm saying? And not that they're gonna be perfect, because nobody's perfect. Everybody's got their stuff. Again, on social media, we can present what we want. We could present, put a little blurb up, put the little reel up, put the picture and all that. But listen and look to the people who are really doing something, and just be mindful. Again, I'm a Kevin Samuels. I've had many conversations now because people have asked me, and I said, what he's saying, it's not that it's totally wrong. It is how he's saying it and the way he's giving it off and the way he's speaking from a hurt place, and people don't realize that. Meaning, if he's trying to help people, it doesn't feel like he's helping when he's saying at best you're a four. When he's demeaning people based on their penis size, when he's talking about, you know what I'm saying. And so when I looked him up, I googled him. He's like a stylist. He's a management of style, of which, so I was like, he has no training or no skill in relationships, mental health, the dating, none of that. He literally is like, again, like he helps with marketing, like his background is in that, you know. And so, not to take away, because to me credentials help you kind of get somewhere, but it either is going to add or take away from who you are. It's going to exasperate that. And so just be mindful about who you're listening to. And I told my friend the other day too, I said, well, the people who are coming to Kevin Samuels are wanting to get what they want to get from him. So if they like that information, they're wanting somebody who wants to date a ball player, somebody who makes a lot of money, and they think they can get what they need from him, do it. Where are his statistics at? Where is his kind of breakdown or data about how he's been helpful to people instead of just running his mouth?
No, that I understand completely what you're saying, and I was drinking the Kevin Samuel juice. Just piqued my curiosity in what he was
I'm curious
saying.
too. I want to hear what your thoughts were as a man, because
Yeah,
I have a theory about it and I want to test it a little bit.
I think when you have how do you say, like when you got the whole I think there's two separate movements happening right now, and wherever you fall at on the spectrum of the movement, it's what your opinion swing. When you have one like, I don't need a man, I don't need this, and it's downplaying men, you kind of go to the one that's saying like uplift them in to an extent. Like, all right, let me go over here. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's having that,
Mm,
because it does play with your mindset, and it's like, oh, this is what you got to do, or oh, this is what happened, and so I know the truth always lies in the middle. It's not one or the other. Or even when you hear again, someone like the Game or Derek Jackson, when they kind of like made their name off of downplaying men, you kind of go in the other side of like, all right, well, you downplaying women in that capacity, and or uplifting. I don't even want to say downplaying. When you're uplifting to combat with the downplaying, and so I think that's where the it lies in, and you getting them cult followers that of like, you start drinking the juice, and it's like, all right, I don't, even if you don't agree, it's almost like what is it, not religion, politics, where you may not agree everything democratic, but it's like, all right, but I'm on this side, so I gotta kind of agree with it. And it's like, no, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But that's my overall perspective, still just like trying to understand it, because it's a lot of impressionable like people out in this world, especially with again listening to the Game and all of these things where for example, the Game says something along the lines of like, if you're a man, my girl has to never worry about paying all of these bills, like I'm gonna take care of it, I'm gonna do all of this stuff. That's what real men do. And early on within my career, I believe that, and find myself in debt trying to live up to an image that wasn't there. I'm just now coming out on the other side of that. I'm like, that's not reality. That's not my reality anyway. And so you got to be careful with listening to these, different things, because they can sway you in an opinion. So I'm always worried about the younger children or the youth, because they're listening to everything that they're saying, and can sway their opinion to thinking that's law and not opinion.
absolutely. And I love that you said, I have to do what works for me, right? Because you're right, there's always two sides to it, right? So, like you said, I saw what the Game said, but people really had to pay attention and be very clear about what he's saying, because you're right. He was like, yeah, as a man, my woman doesn't pay for anything. If you paid attention, he also said, but she's also taking care of the house, cooking, cleaning, right? So yeah, so if you're a traditional person and a traditional person in a relationship, that works for you. For somebody like me and me being in a relationship, I want a partnership, right?
Mhm.
I want a partnership. I want us to be in this together. That means it's not 50-50, but how am I supporting you right now with what you're doing and what I'm doing, right? What does that look like? Because I can take out the garbage, but do you want me to take out the garbage? You know what I'm saying? Babe, are you busy? So what can I do? So what fits for you, but pay very close attention to, again, where you're getting it from, what that really means, and does it fit for you? But you're right. I worry about, again, the younger generation, because they really take that word and take it as like word, like God, like, okay, yeah, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, and again, that was something that I had to learn, because again, it's like I do believe in that. I should be able to do that, but if your circumstances is not there, if you don't have that type of financial capability, you can't live up to that. You have to be with, again, how you relate to another person. Let them. Are you taking out the trash? Oh, I can wash the dishes. Or if you're, making in this amount of money, again, earlier you said in the conversation, women didn't have certain rights, and now with them being busy, you can't expect them to go to work for 8 hours, make their money, and then come home and do all of those other things that considered what a woman does. Some men are taking care of the kids, some are doing these things. And I think if you don't have that unique thing that works for you and your relationship, then that's when problems come, because then you're starting to be like, no, you need to be doing this as a man, and you're like, yo, no, you need to be doing this as a woman. And I think that's where it like messes a lot of those different things up.
Oh yeah, I always challenge couples when I'm working with them to, one, challenge what role did you learn from, again, the woman you grew up around or the men you grew up around, about how you're supposed to be in relation with your partner, right?
Mm-mm.
What invisible contract do you have? And I told them we all have it. We had this idea. Actually, a couple told me the other day, like, yeah, I grew up watching Bill Cosby, so I wanted my relationship to be like that. Like I thought that's what you did, right? Not recognizing like that was TV. Claire Huxtable wasn't having all them kids being an attorney, him doctor. Who watching the kids? Who babysitting them? Really? Who's doing
Mm.
that? You know? So I really had to challenge that. Like I want you to think about that. Like the role that you saw, does that fit for you? Are you doing it just because that's what you saw to be done? Does that work? Right? And what expectations do you have that your partner doesn't know about? But you get mad if they don't meet the expectations, but they have no idea about it.
Mm, no, that's true. The invisible contract. I didn't even think about that. That's a gem in itself. Did I fall in your Kevin Samuels theory spectrum?
No, okay, so let me ask you this, right? So this is an interesting thing, because there was a couple of my good guy friends who came to me, all of them who weren't asking me about their, but they were like, yo, what'd you think about Kevin Samuels? What he said? I think what he said is right. Like black women don't listen to us, they don't hear us, they're always talking, da da da. And I was like, well, I don't think Kevin Samuels is wrong, but again, when he speaks and you want to cringe, like I've heard everybody's reaction, you want to cringe, you want to be like, yo, is like you're demeaning and being disrespectful, specifically to black women, because I've heard him do other interviews where it's not with black women and he's not the same. I said he's speaking from a hurt place. So what I know is he's been divorced twice. I don't know his relationship with, again, his mother, his aunties, his caregivers, whoever took care of him, because it comes from that place. I said, but what I started noticing is that the men who didn't have a good relationship with their mother or had a tenuous relationship with their mother would always come to me with that question. Like, oh no, but he's right. Black women don't listen to us, right? So I started testing it. I was like, let me ask a black male, a friend of mine, or somebody who has a good relationship with their mother, what they think about Kevin Samuels. And I asked somebody, I think it was my sister's husband. He was like, yeah, nah, it doesn't, I don't, he was like, I don't believe that. He was like, I don't agree with him. I think he's this and that. And I was like, So, and I actually want to do some research on it, but I'm really curious about how, when we call it, and you'll learn this, therapist, attachment theory, which you probably already know about. Attachment theory is based on this whole research this therapist, or actually he was a scientist, did in regards to our connection to our caregivers or our parents, right? So either it's secure, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. So based on the relationship I had with my parent early on dictates how I'm in relation with everybody else, right? So if I didn't have a close relationship and I didn't always believe they would be there, then I might have an avoidant attachment. So what I was thinking, I was like, yo, I wonder if specifically black men, like depending on their attachment style with their mother, does that impact their relationship with other black women, right? Do they feel like they're not heard? Now, what I will give Kevin Samuels is that is not, he hasn't been heard wherever at in his relationships, his life, he hasn't been heard. And what he is screaming for is for somebody to listen to him because he's been hurt, right? And so he's trying to protect other people from being hurt just in a way where he's still indirectly hurting people and doesn't recognize it. But that's a whole nother story. But No, you didn't fall into that because again, I'm just curious. I was like, I want to interview more men, like, oh, or do something where we test their attachment style and then see where it falls. So, yeah.
I I always am cautious, and I use the word that I'm about to go against, but I'm always cautious of anyone that speaks in absolutes, because I
Mhm.
don't think anything is absolute. There's always nuance in everything, and so anything that say all do this, or people every time do this, or everyone does this, and I don't like that, because I don't think it's true. I don't think everyone falls into any category, and so I'm always curious about that. But I'm again, I guess that's the little mini therapist in me, that why are people clinging to this, or why are people feeling like this? And I love hearing like different perspectives, especially when they're controversial to an extent, because it's like there's a group of people that feel this way, obviously, if you have an audience. And to the point of Kevin saying, he's like, I was speaking to men for years and no one really cared. It wasn't until I started speaking about or towards women is when people started to really, analyze anything that I was saying, because he was saying I was trying to uplift men to go into this way to attract women. But he's again, like you said, it's another subject, another story. Um Another topic for another day. Is there any lasting I didn't even go on my questions. I think we got everything. Let me make sure, but
Now you good, Reg. Reg, you were excellent at this, and I love this because it felt like a conversation. But I know it was like, again, you asked me questions, but you asked me some good questions. Right? I was like, well, that's good.
now, again, being actually interested in the conversation and the purpose and the person that I'm talking to always helps. And I think I met on all of them. I didn't go into how we met. I went through. No, that was before. I always say that I'm so used to telling the story in that way. So I was on my mental health journey, and I was supposed to be speaking at an event, but I didn't get to speak. They found somebody to replace, or whatever the case may be. But I did hear rumblings of Black Men Hill, and I was supposed to submit my application, but I was late. I'm like, all right, well, I ain't submitted, whatever. um and so I was at I went to the event just to be in the audience, just to hear the crowd and had a conversation. And I just remember someone like in the far corner in another part of the room just giving all of this information, perspective, and different things, and they mentioned Black Men Hill. I'm like, man, I put an application in with them. And so I was like, I went up to, it was Kevana, of course. I went up to, I'm like, hey, I didn't put my application in. I was late, or whatever the case may be. And it's going on 3 years, Kevana. That's crazy. But I didn't put my application in. Is there still a way for me to get in? And she was like, yeah. Um, and it just, the magic happened ever since. They would give me my first therapist. And I don't know, I just appreciate like that. Who knew that moment would have led to this moment, and go on,
Uh,
and all the moments that in between. So I appreciate sticking out on a limb, because it was way past the application deadline.
yeah, no, you look. Here's the crazy part, and this is how God works. It's like that's how I met Zakia the same day at the same event,
Wow.
same day.
Wow.
I specifically remember you were sitting on this side and Zaki was sitting on this side. And I remember I was up and we had been talking and you got up and you said something and it stood out for me. That's why you stuck out for me. So when you came over and talked about it, I was like, Reg, go do it now. I'm gonna give them the name. Don't worry about it. Put your application in. We good. You were just talking about again mental health for yourself, what you experienced, really getting the help. But you had already started your path. I think you had
Mm-hmm.
already started the podcast. You were
Mm-hmm.
already doing things, but you said something that stood out was like, yeah, we they say we have these resources, but we really? How do I get access to them? Like you were challenging the status quo, and I was like, yeah, thank you. And that was before I knew you had applied for Black Men Heal. So it all comes full circle. So again, you're a blessing. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep building. You're already a therapist. Other stuff is going to be pretentious. We're like, yeah, okay, yeah, but you a therapist, so you're
What
yeah.
you give me hope, or I even say Kashar, talking to Shar about it, knowing her background. Like I feel like I'm late in my. I always feel like I'm late in my journey. I'm always so early in it that I feel like I'm late, and I'm like, all right, well, um, I don't know if this is the path that I want to do, or if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like always trying to challenge like my brain, and when I'm thinking, I know I'm supposed to be doing something though in a capacity with some letters or some way. And so just hearing that you was like, nah, I was doing closing call real estate, and Char was like, I was in law, and then just hearing like the different lives within the lives, that you can still be on that journey. And mind you, and I know we short on time, so I'm gonna keep it cut right here. Drexel just stopped accepting people into their behavioral health program. So that was another, mind you, I work for them right now, and so now they like, all right, these are these alternative degrees that you can go into that kind of aligns in this the college of nursing and health. And I'm like, is this guy trying to, knowing that I was supposed to go this way, or I thought I was going this way, it's like, no, you go this way. And so now I'm like, am I getting my bachelor's in the health services and administration? It's still under that, but it's more of they say they mix business with health, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. It's not
that's the
necessarily
degree.
therapy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, whatever you do is going to be amazing.
Oh,
Keep advocating, keep talking, because people need to hear your voice and people need the platforms that you're creating.
I appreciate that. Listen, this won't be the last time we hear Kevana, because there's other topics that I want her to cover in some different capacity. But again, we'll talk off air about that. Is there any lasting remarks you want to leave to the people?
No, just I would say again, try therapy. You know what I'm saying? It's in our community, like you said, we're breaking the stigma brick by brick, piece by piece. And the more and more we do it, again, the healing that we get to do, the healing our ancestors couldn't do. We have the space. Just try it, if anything. You know what I'm saying? If it don't work, it don't work, but try
Ooh, that was a gem. We get to do the healing our ancestors couldn't do. That's a gem. On that note, please subscribe, please follow. I'll put Kavana's information in the chat. People will be able to connect with you. And just because she does a lot on social media. With I'm going. I see her therapy office on Saturdays, healing on purpose. Like
it.
I see it all. So please make sure y'all stay in tune with everything. This won't be the last time you see me and her. I'm sure we'll be in other capacities together as well, which we are. That was a good dinner we had the other day.
We needed that. We needed that. That was dope. Yes.
But remember, please subscribe, comment, leave a review on Apple. That helps out. For some reason, people love the reviews on Apple. And remember, this platform has never been about a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.